Hello dear learners, welcome to this SWAYAM NPTEL online course on inclusive education. I am Dr. Umakant Prasad, an assistant professor from Department of Education, Vinaya Bhavan, Vishwabharati Shantiniketan. This is week 2 and today we are going to discuss lecture number 10, that is inclusive education in India after independence. During this lecture, we will discuss constitutional provisions for inclusive education in India and government initiative for development of inclusive education in India. At the time of India's independence in 1947, educational opportunities for children with disabilities were extremely limited and largely concentrated in a few urban centers. There were only about 32 schools for visually impaired children, 30 schools for hearing impaired students and just 3 for children with intellectual disabilities across the entire country. These institutions were mostly established by missionaries, charitable organizations or private efforts with minimal government involvement. Over the decades, with growing recognition of the rights and needs of disabled individuals, India has made significant strides in this area. Today, there are over 3,500 special schools across the country, supported by extensive infrastructure and a strong framework of policies and laws. Let us try to understand the journey of special and inclusive education in India through its major stages. As far as constitutional provisions for inclusive education in India is concerned, fundamental rights and directive principles from the basic foundation of the Indian Constitution. These reflect the basic principles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. The Constitution of India applies uniformly to all Indian citizens. The Constitution of India guarantees equal status, respect, dignity, rights, responsibilities and status to all citizens of the country irrespective of their caste, creed, gender, religion, language, economic status, disability and any other differences. Inclusive education in India is supported by several constitutional provisions that uphold the right to education and equality for all, including children with disabilities. Article 14 of Indian Constitution, that is right to equality, guarantees equality before the law and equal protection of law for all individuals, which forms the foundation for non-discriminatory inclusive education. Article 15 is prohibition of discrimination, that prohibits discrimination on the grounds of religion, race, caste, sex or place of birth and supports affirmative action for socially and educationally disadvantaged groups, including persons with disabilities. Article 21 of Indian Constitution, that is right to education, was introduced by 86th Constitutional Amendment Act in 2002. It makes free and compulsory education as a fundamental right for all the children aged 6 to 14 years old, including children with disabilities. Article 41, that is right to work, education and public assistance, and that is the part of directive principles of the state policy, encourages the state to provide education and assistance to disabled and unprivileged persons within its economic capacity. Article 46 of Indian Constitution, that is promotion of educational and economic interest of weaker section, directs the state to promote the interests of the weaker sections of the society, especially scheduled castes, scheduled tribes and persons with disabilities. Article 21A K, that is fundamental duties. It is the duty of every parent or guardian to provide opportunity for education to their child or ward between the age of 6 to 14 years old, reinforcing inclusive practices. These provisions collectively establish a strong constitutional mandate for inclusive education, ensuring that children with disabilities have equal access to quality education in mainstream schools. The Indian judiciary, particularly the Supreme Court and various high courts, have played a crucial role in interpreting these constitutional provisions to uphold the rights of persons with disabilities, including their right to inclusive education. After India's independence, by the time India gained its freedom in 1947, the country's infrastructure for special education was very limited and unevenly developed, reflecting both colonial neglect and the early scattered effort of missionaries, philanthropists and reformers. India had only 32 schools for visually impaired students, 30 schools for hearing impaired students and 3 schools for mentally retarded students, that is now called as intellectually disabled students. Most of the institutions were privately run, often by Christian missionaries or charitable organizations. There was minimal government involvement in funding, regulating or teacher training. These schools were mainly located in major cities like Bombay, Calcutta, Madras, Amritsar and Lahore, and rural areas were almost completely underserved. Before independence, Christian missionaries and non-governmental organizations played a crucial role in providing education and services to individuals with disabilities, particularly those with visual impairment, hearing impairment and cognitive impairments. After independence, the Indian government increasingly took on the responsibility of providing education, rehabilitation and social services to persons with disabilities. Many initiatives were taken by Government of India, that is several schemes, policies, legislative frameworks and growing awareness about the rights of persons with disabilities. The Kothari Commission, officially known as the Indian Education Commission, was a landmark initiative in shaping modern Indian education policy. It made important recommendations regarding the education of children with disabilities, recognizing the need for inclusive and special education system in India for the first time in a structured manner. The Kothari Commission laid the foundation for policies that would later shape India's special and inclusive education framework, influencing programs and laws such as the Integrated Education for Disabled Children that was introduced in 1974 and later the Persons with Disabilities Act that came in 1995 and Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act that was introduced in 2016. The 1968 National Policy on Education was India's first comprehensive education policy and it marked a significant step towards recognizing the educational needs of children with disabilities. Although its reference to special education were limited, the policy emphasizes the importance of integrating children with mild disabilities into regular schools wherever feasible. It laid the groundwork for future inclusive education by promoting equal access and opportunities for all learners, including those with special needs. The 1968 National Policy on Education reflected a growing awareness of the need for specialized support and infrastructure to ensure the participation of children with disability in the mainstream education system. The Integrated Education for Disabled Children that came in 1974 was launched by Ministry of Education, Government of India aims to integrate disabled children into normal school system. It was a pioneering step towards inclusive education in India. Its primary aim was to integrate children with mild to moderate disabilities into regular schools, ensuring they receive equal educational opportunities alongside their non-disabled peers. The scheme provided financial support for aids and appliances, books, transport and special educators within mainstream education system and mainstream schools. The 1986 National Policy on Education included provisions for children with special educational needs, aiming to integrate them into mainstream education and provide necessary support. This policy marked a significant step towards inclusive education in India, focusing on integrated education, teacher training and support services. It also aimed to remove disparities and equalize educational opportunities for all, particularly focusing on marginalized groups like women, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes. It also emphasized improving the quality of education, particularly at elementary level, through measures like curriculum reform, infrastructure improvement and teacher training. In 1987, the National Council of Education Research and Training, that is NCERT, in collaboration with UNICEF, launched the Project Integrated Education for Disabled Children. This project aimed to strengthen the integration of learners with disabilities into regular schools. The project focused on training of regular teachers in special education techniques, adapting curricula and providing resource support within existing schools. The Rehabilitation Council of India, that is RCI, was initially established as a registered society in 1986. However, the RCI became a statutory body on 22nd June 1993 following the enactment of RCI Act in 1992. The Act, which was later amended in 2000. The Rehabilitation Council of India, as a statutory body responsible for maintaining a central rehabilitation register, monitor services for individuals with disability, standardize syllabus and setting minimum standards for education and training and ensuring the quality and accountability of services providing for persons with disabilities. The Act also made it mandatory for rehabilitation professionals to be registered with the Council, thereby promoting professional ethics and safeguarding the rights of persons with disabilities to receive services from qualified professionals. The PWD Act 1995 is a landmark legislation which was passed by Parliament on 12 December 1995 and notified on 7th February 1996. The Act emphasizes the responsibility of the centre and state governments as well as local bodies to provide services, facilities and equal opportunities for persons with disabilities to participate fully in society. It aims to promote and protect the rights of persons with disabilities. It provides a comprehensive legal framework to ensure equal opportunities in education, employment and accessibility. The Act identified 7 categories of disabilities and mandated the reservation of 3% of government jobs and seats in educational institutions for persons with disabilities. It also emphasized the creation of a barrier-free environment, the development of special schools and the promotion of vocational training. This Act marked a significant step towards inclusion, empowerment and the full participation of people with disabilities in society. In 1997, inclusive education was formally integrated into the district primary education program in India. The focus was on integrating children with mild to moderate disabilities into regular primary schools by building the capacity of teachers, developing appropriate teaching learning materials and modifying infrastructure for accessibility. The inclusion of this component in DPEP aimed to ensure that children with special needs could learn alongside their peers in a supportive environment rather than being segregated into special schools. The National Trust for Welfare of Persons with Autism, Cerebral Palsy, Mental Retardation and Multiple Disabilities Act 1999 was enacted to provide legal and institutional support for persons with these specific disabilities. The Act aimed to empower individuals and their families by ensuring long-term care and protection, particularly for those without family support. It established the National Trust as a statutory body to promote independent living and facilitate inclusive education, support community-based rehabilitation and encourage guardianship arrangements. Its primary function is to ensure the welfare of individuals with these conditions by providing legal guardianship, various schemes and promoting their rights and participation in society. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan that was launched in 2001 is a flagship program by Government of India aimed at achieving universalization of elementary education in a time bound manner, as mandated by the 86th Constitutional Amendment, which made education as a fundamental right for children aged 6 to 14 years old. Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan seeks to bridge social, gender and regional gaps in education by ensuring access, retention, equity and quality in elementary schooling. It emphasizes inclusive education, especially for marginalized groups like girls, children with disabilities and those from disadvantaged communities. The program supports infrastructure development, teacher training, curriculum reforms and community participation to improve educational outcomes across the country. The National Policy for Persons with Disabilities, formulated in 2006, aimed to create an inclusive environment for people with disabilities in India, ensuring equal opportunities, rights of protection and full participation in the society. The policy focuses on prevention, rehabilitation and support for various groups including women and children with disabilities. It emphasized a right-based approach to disability, moving beyond welfare to inclusion and empowerment. The policy acknowledges that persons with disabilities are an integral part of society and a valuable resources. The policy addressed key areas such as education, employment, barrier-free access, health care, rehabilitation and social security. It also encouraged the creation of an inclusive environment through awareness campaign and sensitization of society. Importantly, it stressed the involvement of persons with disabilities and their organization in policy planning and implementation as well. The Right of Children to Free and Compulsory Education Act 2009, that is RTI Act, which came into force on 1st April 2010, guarantees free and compulsory elementary education for all children from 6 to 14 years old in India. This right is enshrined in Article 21 of Indian Constitution. The Act outlines specific norms and standards for elementary schools, including infrastructure, teacher-student ratio and the prohibition of certain practices like physical punishment and screening for admission. It also reserves 25% seats in private unaided schools for children from economically weaker sections and disadvantaged groups. The RTI Act aims to promote inclusive, equitable and accessible education for all children across the country. Inclusive education of the disabled at secondary stage, that is IEDSS, is centrally sponsored scheme launched by Government of India in 2009 to promote the inclusion of children with disabilities in mainstream education, especially mainstream secondary school education. The program aims to provide equal opportunities for quality education by supporting the needs of students with disabilities through the provision of assistive devices, scholarship, resource teachers, accessibility improvements and individualized education plan. It encourages schools to adopt inclusive practices, sensitizes teachers and peers and fosters a supportive learning environment. The IEDSS plays a key role in reducing dropout rates and enhancing the academic and social development of children with disabilities at the secondary level. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act, that is RPWD Act 2016, replaced the earlier Persons with Disabilities Act that was came in 1995 to align with the United Nations Conventions on the Right of Persons with Disabilities, which India ratified in 2007. It expanded the definition of disability from 7 to 21 categories. The Act ensures equality, non-discrimination, equal opportunities and full participation of persons with disabilities in society, providing rights to education, employment, accessibility, social security and legal capacity. It mandates inclusive education, accessible infrastructure and 4% reservation in government job and 5% reservation for higher education. The RPWD Act also strengthens penalties for violations and establishes mechanisms such as district level committees and special courts to safeguard the rights of persons with disabilities. The National Education Policy NEP 2020, that is a landmark shift in India's approach to inclusive education, places a strong emphasis to ensure equitable access to quality education for all children, including those with disabilities and learning difficulties. It advocates for the integration of children with special needs into regular schools wherever possible, supported by appropriate resources, assistive technologies and trained teachers. NEP 2020 calls for the removal of barriers to learning by adapting curricula, teaching methods and assessment system to accommodate diverse learning needs. The policy also stresses early identification and intervention along with capacity building for educators to promote a welcoming, barrier free and supportive learning environment to all with children with disabilities. Overall, NEP 2020 envisions an education system that embraces diversity and inclusion as a fundamental principle. Over a period of time, 9 national institutes in the field of disabilities have been set up under Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities under Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. National institutes are in the nature of autonomous bodies established under Society Registration Act 1860, focusing on specific types of disabilities. These institutes are primarily engaged in human resource development in the field of disability by conducting various courses, researches, providing rehabilitation services to persons with disabilities and promoting research and development efforts in the field of disability. Key examples include the National Institutes for Empowerment of Persons with Visual Disability, that is located at Dehradun, National Institute for Empowerment of Persons with Intellectual Disability located at Secunderabad, Ali Yawar Jung National Institute of Speech and Hearing Disabilities, that is in Mumbai, and National Institute for Locomotor Disabilities located in Kolkata. These institutes play a vital role in preparing special educators, developing inclusive teaching materials, conducting awareness programs, and providing consultative support to mainstream schools. Through their efforts, they contribute significantly to advancing the cause of inclusive education and ensuring that children with special needs have access to quality education alongside their peers. In conclusion, we can say after India's independence, inclusive education for students with disabilities became a focus of various government policies and programs. The Indian Constitution guarantees the rights to equality and opportunity for all, including individuals with disabilities. The shift towards inclusion began in 1980s with the launch of Integrated Education for Disabled Children scheme, which aimed to integrate children with disabilities into regular schools. This was further strengthened by Persons with Disabilities Act that was enacted in 1995, which mandates the rights of persons with disabilities to education and participation in society. The introduction of Rights to Education Act 2009 reinforced the vision of inclusive education by ensuring free and compulsory education for all children, including children with special needs. The Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 further solidified the legal framework for inclusive education in India. The more recent National Education Policy 2020 have emphasized the importance of creating an inclusive and equitable education system for all, including those with disabilities. Thus, this journey of inclusive education in India signifies a growing commitment to ensuring education as a fundamental right for all children, regardless of their abilities or disabilities. This inclusive approach recognizes that every child deserves the opportunity to learn and grow in a welcoming environment. There are some references here. Thank you.